The crystal chandelier above the private dining room cast fractured light across 23 faces, each one belonging to someone who'd sworn loyalty to the Moretti name. My father sat at the head of the table, shoulders squared despite the tremor in his hands that he thought no one noticed. I noticed. I'd been noticing for 6 months. Ever since the diagnosis he'd kept hidden from everyone except me. Parkinson's. Early stage, but in our world, weakness was a death sentence delivered by those closest to you. My Uncle Sal stood 3 chairs down, wine glass raised, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. "To my brother Vincent," he announced, voice carrying the particular resonance of a man who'd been planning this moment for years. "Who built an empire, but forgot to secure its foundation." The room went silent. Even the servers froze, trays suspended midair. I was on my feet before I realized I'd moved, my chair scraping against marble loud enough to make heads turn. "Sit down, Uncle." Sal's eyes found mine, and I saw it there. The calculation, the measured assessment of whether I was truly my father's son or just another obstacle to be removed. At 32, I'd spent a decade earning respect through actions that kept me awake at night. I'd done things that stained my soul because that's what this life demanded. But watching my father's humiliation unfold in front of the entire family hierarchy was a line I wouldn't let anyone cross. "Your father's been making mistakes, Marco," Sal said, his tone almost gentle. Almost. "The shipment that went missing last month, the territory we lost to the Calabrese family, the 3 million that disappeared from our accounts." My father's jaw tightened. "Those issues have been addressed." "By hiding them?" Sal pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. Documents spilled out. Financial records, shipping manifests, photographs of my father's trembling signature on papers he could barely sign anymore. "You're sick, Vincent. Everyone in this room can see it now. You've been covering it up, making decisions that put all of us at risk because you're too proud to admit you can't lead anymore." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. I looked at the faces around the table, cousins, captains, soldiers who'd sworn oaths to my father. Some looked away. Others leaned forward, hungry for blood. This was how it happened in our world. Not with bullets, not always. Sometimes it happened with words delivered over expensive wine and imported steaks, in rooms that smelled like leather and betrayal. "This is how you do this?" I asked, my voice low. "At a family dinner?" Sal spread his hands. "Where better? Everyone who matters is here. We vote. Democratic. Clean." "There's nothing clean about this." I moved around the table toward him, and I felt the shift in the room. Hands moving toward concealed weapons, bodies tensing. My father's head of security, Tommy, caught my eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. "Not here. Not now. Too many guns, too many variables." But I wasn't reaching for my weapon. I was reaching for my phone. "Before anyone votes on anything," I said, pulling up the files I'd been compiling for 3 months, ever since I'd suspected Sal's loyalty was as solid as water. "Maybe they should know where that 3 million actually went." I projected my phone's display onto the screen we used for business presentations, and there it was. Bank transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts, all leading back to one source. Sal's mistress in Miami, living in a penthouse my uncle had purchased with money skimmed from family operations over the past 2 years. Sal's face changed. The confident smile cracked. "You want to talk about betrayal?" I continued, scrolling through transaction after transaction. "While my father was building this family, you were bleeding it dry. While he was making hard decisions to keep us all safe, you were setting him up to take the fall for your theft." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, accusations flying. My father remained seated, but I saw something in his eyes that looked like pride mixed with sorrow. He'd known. Of course he'd known. He'd probably known for months, but had been too weak, too compromised by his illness to act on it. That's when she walked in. The waitress was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. She carried a tray of water glasses, and in the chaos of accusations and rage, she was just another invisible servant. Our world was full of them. People who moved through our spaces, serving our food, cleaning our messes, entirely beneath our notice. She approached the table, began setting down glasses with hands that shook slightly. I barely registered her presence. I was too focused on Sal, on the way his face had gone from confident to cornered, on the hands of the men loyal to him moving toward weapons. Then she spoke. "Mr. Moretti," she said, and her voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. "Your brother didn't just steal money. He killed your son." The room went from chaos to absolute silence in the space between heartbeats. My father's face drained of color. "What did you say?" The waitress set down the last glass, and I saw her hands were no longer shaking. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a phone. Old, cracked screen, the kind someone would use if they couldn't afford better. She placed it on the table in front of my father. "My name is Sofia Russo," she said. 5 years ago, your nephew, your son, Antonio, was killed in what everyone said was a random shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. But it wasn't random. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Antonio, my cousin, my best friend. We'd grown up together, gotten into trouble together, learned the family business side by side. He'd been 26 when someone put 3 bullets in him outside a restaurant in Brooklyn. The case had gone cold. My father had spent millions trying to find the killer, had torn the city apart looking for answers. "You need to leave," I said to Sofia, but my voice sounded distant even to my own ears. "Right now." She didn't move. She looked at my father, and there was something in her expression that made me pause. Not fear, not ambition, but a bone-deep exhaustion mixed with determination. "I was there that night," she said. "I was 17, working as a hostess at Marino's. I saw the shooter. I saw the car he got into after. I saw the license plate." She tapped the phone. "I took a picture because I was scared and stupid and didn't know what else to do. Then I heard who'd been killed, heard what family he belonged to, and I ran. Changed my name, moved to Queens, kept my head down for 5 years because I didn't want to die." My father reached for the phone with trembling hands. "Why now? Why tell us this now?" Sophia's jaw tightened. "Because I watched you tonight. I watched your brother try to destroy you, and I couldn't—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "My father died 6 months ago. Cancer. He was a good man, worked construction his whole life, never hurt anyone. At the end, all he talked about was honor, about doing the right thing even when it costs you everything." Her eyes glistened. "I've been carrying this secret for 5 years, and it's been eating me alive. You deserve to know the truth about your son." My father opened the phone. His hands shook so badly I moved to his side, took the device from him, pulled up the photo gallery. There were 3 images, grainy and dark but clear enough. A man in a leather jacket, face visible in the streetlight, a black sedan, license plate captured, and a third photo zoomed in showing the driver. Sal's son, my cousin Paulie. "No." Sal said, backing away from the table. She's lying. This is a setup. But I was already cross-referencing the license plate through our databases, the ones we maintained through contacts in the DMV and police department. The car had been registered to a shell company, the same shell company that appeared in Sal's financial records, the one he'd used to hide his theft. The pieces fell into place with the weight of tombstones settling into earth. Antonio found out, I said, the words tasting like ash. He discovered you were stealing from the family, so you had Paulie kill him and made it look random. Sal's hand moved toward his jacket. Tommy and 3 other security men had weapons drawn before he could complete the motion. The other men at the table, the captains and soldiers who'd been watching this drama unfold, shifted away from Sal like he was radioactive. My father stood. The tremor in his hands was pronounced now, but his voice was steady. 5 years. I mourned my son for 5 years, and you sat at my table, drank my wine, took my money, and tonight you tried to take my position, using his death as part of your justification for my weakness. Vincent, Sal started. Get him out of my sight, my father said quietly. Take him to the warehouse on 9th. I'll deal with him personally. As Tommy's men moved to collect Sal, I turned to Sofia. She stood perfectly still, face pale but composed, like someone who'd just jumped off a cliff and was waiting to see if the landing would kill her. You just signed your own death warrant, I told her. You know that, right? Sal has people. His son has people. Even if we protect you, they'll come. I know, she said simply. But I couldn't carry it anymore. The guilt, the silence. I've been dying slowly for 5 years. At least this way, I die having done the right thing. I studied her face, trying to understand what kind of person walked into a room full of killers and volunteered for execution just to ease their conscience. In our world, people like that didn't exist. Everyone had an angle, a play, something they wanted. But looking at Sofia Russo, I saw only exhaustion and a strange kind of peace. Take her to the safe house on Staten Island, my father said. Keep her there until we've cleaned this up. Dad, do it, Marco. He met my eyes, and I saw the father I'd known before the diagnosis, before the weakness, before the betrayal. She gave us truth when she could have stayed silent. We protect her. I nodded to Tommy, who assigned 2 men to escort Sofia out. As they moved toward the door, she looked back at my father. I'm sorry about your son, she said. He smiled at me that night when he came into the restaurant, held the door for an old woman. He seems like a good person. My father's face cracked, just for a moment, and I saw the grief he'd been carrying for 5 years break through the surface. He was the best of us. After Sofia left, the dinner dissolved. The captains filed out one by one, each stopping to clasp my father's hand or shoulder, silent acknowledgments of loyalty renewed. The attempted coup had failed spectacularly, and Sal's betrayal had actually strengthened my father's position. Nothing united a family like a common enemy, especially when that enemy came from within. I stayed behind as the room emptied, helping my father back to his chair. He looked older than his 63 years, worn down by disease and betrayal and grief. You knew, I said, about Sal stealing. You knew and you let it happen. I suspected. I didn't have proof until tonight. He smiled weakly. You've been investigating. For 3 months. I thought... I stopped, swallowed the admission. I thought maybe you were losing your edge, That the illness was affecting your judgment. It is, he said bluntly. That's why I need you ready to take over, sooner than we planned. The weight of that statement settled on my shoulders like a crown made of lead. I'd always known this day would come, but I'd imagined it years in the future, after I'd had more time to prepare, to prove myself worthy of the responsibility. What about Antonio? I asked. What do we do about Paulie? My father's expression went cold, the kind of cold that had built an empire and maintained it through 4 decades of war and peace. We do what needs to be done. But first, we make sure the girl is protected. She gave us a gift tonight. We honor that. I spent the next 3 days at the Staten Island safe house, coordinating security and dealing with the fallout from the dinner. Sal had been dealt with. I didn't ask for details, and my father didn't offer them. Paulie had disappeared, but we had people looking. He'd surface eventually. They always did. Sofia Russo stayed in the guest room on the 2nd floor, venturing out only for meals that she barely touched. She didn't ask questions about what was happening, didn't demand to know her fate. She just existed in this strange limbo, reading books from the safe house library and staring out windows at the water. On the 3rd evening, I found her on the back deck, wrapped in a jacket against the October chill. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. You should eat something, I said, joining her at the railing. I'm not hungry. She didn't look at me. How much longer? Until what? Until you decide what to do with me? I leaned against the railing, studying her profile. In different lighting, away from the chaos of that dinner, I could see she was beautiful in an understated way. Sharp cheekbones, full mouth, eyes that held depths of experience that someone her age shouldn't have. My father meant what he said. We're protecting you. Why? She finally turned to face me. I'm nobody. I'm a waitress who saw something I shouldn't have. In your world, people like me disappear. Usually, I admitted. But you're not like most people. You walked into that room knowing you might not walk out. You told the truth when lying would have been safer. That means something. It means I'm an idiot with a death wish. It means you have integrity. That's rare, especially in my world. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your world. The world where brothers kill nephews and uncles betray brothers. Where money matters more than blood and loyalty is just a word people use before they stab you in the back. Yes, I said simply. That world. It's ugly and brutal and built on violence. But it's also the only world I've ever known. The only world my father knew. We don't pretend to be something we're not. At least you're honest about it. She pulled the jacket tighter around herself. What happens now? Do I stay here forever? Change my name again? Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder? We're working on that. Paulie's people are limited. Once we find him, the threat decreases significantly. And if you don't find him? I didn't answer because we both knew the reality. If Paulie stayed in the wind, Sofia would never be truly safe. She'd have to live under our protection indefinitely, her life reduced to safe houses and bodyguards and constant vigilance. I have a sister, she said quietly. Younger. She's 19, in college upstate. She doesn't know where I am or what I did. I haven't talked to her in 3 days because I can't risk calling her, can't risk leading anyone to her. We have people watching her, I said. Discreetly. She's safe. Sofia's head snapped toward me. You're having my sister followed? Protected. There's a difference. Is there? She pushed away from the railing. You know what the worst part is? I did the right thing. I finally did the right thing after 5 years of being a coward. And now my sister is being watched by the Mafia, and I'm trapped in a house I can't leave, and I'll probably never have a normal life again. That's the reward for honesty in your world. Prison or death, just dressed up differently. She was right, and I had no counter-argument. This was the reality of our world. It consumed everything it touched, turned good intentions into collateral damage, made victims out of anyone who got too close. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "You deserved better than this." "We all deserve better than what we get." She headed for the door, then paused. "Your cousin, Antonio, what was he like?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I've been carrying his death for 5 years. I'd like to know who I've been mourning." I considered the question, reaching back through memory to pull out pieces of the person Antonio had been. He was good. Too good for this life, probably. He wanted to go legitimate, thought we could transition the family businesses into something legal. Real estate, restaurants, legitimate investments. My father was considering it. Then Antonio died, and the idea died with him. "I'm sorry," Sofia said, "for your loss, for all of it." She went inside, leaving me alone on the deck with the setting sun and thoughts that felt heavier than they should. Antonio had been the best of us, the one who saw a way forward that didn't involve violence and fear. His death had closed that door, locked us into the path we were on. And now Sofia, who'd tried to give us truth and justice, was paying the price for our world's brutality. I pulled out my phone and called Tommy. "Status on Paulie?" "Nothing yet. He's gone deep." "Find him. I don't care what it costs or what you have to do. Find him." "Boss, we're trying, but..." "Try harder! We need this resolved." I ended the call and stared out at the water, watching darkness fall over the harbor. Somewhere out there, Paulie was hiding, planning, probably gathering resources for retaliation. He'd lost his father, his position in the family, everything. Men like that became desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. The next morning, I woke to shouting downstairs. I was out of bed and armed in seconds, taking the stairs 2 at a time. In the kitchen, Sofia stood facing off against Tommy, her face flushed with anger. "I don't care about your protocols," she was saying. "I need to call my sister. Now." "Miss Russo, we've been over this. It's her birthday!" Sofia's voice cracked. "She's 19 today, and I've never missed her birthday. Not once. I need to at least send her a message." "It's not safe," Tommy said, his tone patient but firm. "Any communication can be traced." "Then let them trace it. Let them come. I'm so tired of being afraid, of hiding, of..." She stopped when she saw me. "Tell him, please. 5 minutes. 1 phone call. That's all I'm asking." I looked at Tommy, who shook his head fractionally. He was right. Any contact with Sofia's previous life was a risk. But looking at her face, seeing the desperation there, I understood something fundamental. We'd already taken everything from her: her safety, her freedom, her future. The least we could do was let her keep her humanity. "Give her a burner phone," I said. 5 minutes, routed through our scramblers. Tommy's jaw tightened, but he nodded and left to retrieve the phone. Sofia sagged against the counter, relief and gratitude warring on her face. "Thank you," she whispered. 5 minutes, I repeated. "Don't tell her where you are or what happened. Just wish her happy birthday." When Tommy returned with the phone, Sofia took it with shaking hands. She dialed, waited, and then her entire face transformed when someone answered. Mia? Hi, baby. Happy birthday. Her voice broke. I'm sorry I haven't called. Things have been crazy with work, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking about you today. I love you so much. I turned away, giving her privacy, but I could hear the conversation. The younger sister's excited chatter about her classes and friends, Sofia's careful responses that revealed nothing about her current situation. It lasted exactly 5 minutes before Tommy gestured that time was up. I have to go, Mia, but I'll call again soon, okay? Be good, study hard, and remember what Dad always said. Do the right thing, even when it costs you. She listened for a moment, then smiled. I love you too. Bye. She handed the phone back to Tommy, and I saw tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she said again, wiping at her eyes. Thank you. You should eat breakfast, I said, uncomfortable with the raw emotion in the room. There's food in the dining room. She nodded and left, and Tommy waited until she was gone before speaking. We got a hit on Paulie. He's in Philadelphia, staying with associates of the Calabrese family. The Calabrese family. Our rivals. The ones who'd been encroaching on our territory. Of course Paulie would run to them. He'd offer information, connections, anything to buy protection and position himself for revenge. How reliable is the intel? Very. One of their soldiers is on our payroll. Paulie's been there 3 days trying to broker a deal. I processed this information, calculating angles and risks. Set up a meeting with the Calabrese underboss. Neutral ground. Tell him we want to discuss terms. Tommy raised an eyebrow. Terms? They give us Paulie? We give them the territory in Red Hook they've been trying to take for 2 years. Your father won't like that. My father wants this resolved. Red Hook is a bargaining chip. Paulie is family business. Tommy nodded and left to make the arrangements. I stood in the kitchen, watching through the window as Sofia sat at the dining room table, pushing food around her plate without eating. She'd given up everything to tell the truth, and now she was trapped in limbo while we negotiated with criminals to resolve a situation that never should have existed. The meeting with the Calabrese family was set for 2 days later, in a restaurant in Manhattan that served as neutral ground for business discussions. I brought Tommy and 3 other men, all armed but instructed to keep weapons concealed unless necessary. The Calabrese underboss, a man named Giancarlo, arrived with similar numbers. We sat at a corner booth, ordered drinks neither of us would touch, and got down to business. You want Paulie Moretti, Giancarlo said without preamble. He's told us interesting things about your family's operations. He's told you lies mixed with enough truth to sound credible, I countered. He killed my cousin 5 years ago and framed it as a random shooting. He's a liability to everyone, including you. Maybe. Or maybe he's an asset. A Moretti who knows all your secrets, willing to share them for the right price. He's also the son of a traitor who tried to overthrow my father. Whatever he's told you is compromised by his own desperation. You're smart enough to know that. Giancarlo smiled. So why should we give him to you? Because we're offering Red Hook in exchange. Full territory rights, including the docks and distribution networks. We'll even smooth the transition with our contacts in the Longshoremen's Union. That got his attention. Red Hook was valuable, a strategic position the Calabrese family had been trying to acquire for years. It was worth more than one desperate, compromised traitor. Your father agrees to this? I speak for my father in this matter. Giancarlo studied me for a long moment, assessing whether I actually had the authority to make this deal. Finally, he nodded. Red Hook for Paulie, But we want the transition completed within 2 weeks. Done. Where is he? Safe house in South Philly. I'll have him delivered to you tomorrow night. We shook hands, sealing the deal, and I left the restaurant with the weight of what I'd just done settling on my shoulders. I'd traded territory for revenge, given up a strategic position to settle a family matter. My father would understand, but the other captains might see it as weakness. But looking at Sofia's face when I returned to the safe house and told her we'd found Paulie, I knew I'd made the right choice. The relief in her eyes, the way her entire body seemed to relax for the first time in days, that was worth more than territory or strategic advantage. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we finish this, and then you get your life back." Paulie was delivered as promised, bound and gagged in the trunk of a car that pulled up to our warehouse on 9th Street. My father was waiting inside, standing straighter than I'd seen him in months, the tremor in his hands barely visible. This was personal. This was about Antonio. They brought Paulie in and forced him to his knees in the center of the warehouse floor. He was 30 years old, my cousin, someone I'd grown up with. We'd played together as kids, learned the business together as teenagers. And he'd killed Antonio, his own cousin, because his father had ordered it. My father walked a slow circle around Paulie, saying nothing. The silence was worse than any accusation, any threat. It stretched out, heavy with 5 years of grief and rage and betrayal. Finally, Paulie broke. "I didn't want to do it. Uncle Vincent, I swear, I didn't want to." "But you did." My father's voice was quiet. "You put 3 bullets in my son. Your cousin. Your blood." "Dad made me. He said Antonio was going to expose us, that he'd found evidence of the theft and was going to turn us into the feds. He said it was him or us." "So you chose murder over honesty. You chose your father's greed over family loyalty." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." My father pulled out a gun, the same gun he'd carried for 40 years, the one he'd used to build and protect this family. He pressed it against Paulie's forehead. "Sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years of not knowing who killed my son. Please, a waitress had more courage than you," my father said. "A girl who had nothing to gain and everything to lose told us the truth, while you, my own blood, let me suffer in ignorance." He pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the warehouse, final and absolute. Paulie's body crumpled to the concrete, and my father stood over him, gun still raised, his entire body shaking now, not from disease, but from emotion. I moved to his side, gently took the gun from his hand. "It's done, Dad. It's finished." He nodded, but I saw tears on his face, cutting tracks through the mask of cold authority he'd worn for so long. "I killed my nephew, my brother's son. You delivered justice for your son. There's a difference." We left the warehouse, leaving Tommy and his crew to handle the cleanup. In the car, my father seemed to age a decade, the adrenaline and rage that had sustained him draining away to leave only exhaustion. "Tell the girl she's free to go," he said quietly. "Give her money, new identity if she wants it, whatever she needs to start over." "I will." "And Marco?" He looked at me with eyes that held 40 years of hard decisions and their consequences. "When you take over, when this is all yours, try to be better than I was, than we were. Antonio wanted us to go legitimate. Maybe it's not too late for that. I didn't answer because we both knew the truth. Men like us didn't get redemption. We didn't get second chances or clean slates. We just got older and harder and more compromised until someone younger and hungrier came along to take what we'd built. But maybe Sofia could have that second chance. Maybe we could give her the fresh start that none of us would ever get. I returned to the safe house and found her in the living room reading. She looked up when I entered, and I saw the question in her eyes before she asked it. "It's done," I said. "Paulie's dead. The threat is over." She closed the book slowly, processing this information. I should feel something, shouldn't I? Relief or satisfaction or something. But I just feel empty. That's normal. Revenge doesn't heal anything. It just closes a chapter. What happens to me now? I sat down across from her. That's up to you. We can set you up with a new identity, relocate you anywhere in the country, or you can go back to your life, though we'd recommend being cautious for a while. There might be residual loyalty to Sal or Paulie, people who want revenge. So I'm free, but not really free. I can leave, but I'll always be looking over my shoulder. For a while. Eventually people forget. New conflicts arise, old grudges fade. You'll be able to live normally again. She laughed. That same humorless sound I'd heard before. Normally. I don't even know what that means anymore. It means you get to choose your own path. That's more than most people in my world ever get. She studied my face for a long moment. What about you? Do you get to choose? No. I was born into this. It's the only path I have. That's sad, she said softly. You seem like you could be more than this. Different than this. Maybe in another life. She stood, walked to the window overlooking the water. I want to go home, to my apartment in Queens. I want to call my sister and tell her everything. I want to stop being afraid. Then that's what you'll do. I'll have men watching your building for the next few months, just to be safe. But you're free to go. Will I see you again? The question surprised me. Why would you want to? She turned to face me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Because you're the only person in this whole mess who treated me like a human being instead of a problem to be solved. Because I think there's more to you than the cold Mafia boss act you put on, and because... She stopped, shook her head. Never mind, it's stupid. Say it. Because I think we're alike, you and me. We both do what we think is right, even when it costs us everything. We both carry weight we shouldn't have to carry. And I think we both wish we could be something other than what we are. She was right, and that scared me more than any threat or betrayal. I'd spent my entire life building walls between myself and the rest of the world, maintaining distance to survive in a business where emotion was weakness. But Sofia saw through those walls like they didn't exist. I can't offer you anything, I said. My life is violence and darkness and decisions that stain your soul. You deserve better than that. Maybe I do. But maybe I'm tired of playing it safe. Maybe I want to understand the world that took 5 years of my life. She crossed the room, stopped a foot away from me. Or maybe I just want to see if the man I saw on that deck, the one who looked at the sunset like it hurt him, is real or just something I imagined. I should have walked away, should have maintained the distance, kept her safe from the toxicity of my world. But I'd been alone for so long, surrounded by people I couldn't trust, carrying burdens I couldn't share. And here was someone who saw me, really saw me, and wasn't running. "I'm real," I said quietly, "but I'm also everything you should avoid. Everything your father warned you about when he talked about doing the right thing." "My father also said that people deserve second chances, that redemption is possible if you're willing to fight for it." She reached out, touched my hand. "Maybe we both deserve that chance." I looked down at her hand on mine, small and warm and steady. In my world, trust was currency more valuable than money. And somehow, this woman I'd known for less than a week had earned mine. "Stay," I said. "Not here, not in hiding, but stay in New York. Let me see you again. Let's figure out if this, whatever this is real or just trauma bonding." She smiled, and it transformed her face. "Okay, but I'm not giving up my apartment or my life. If we do this, it's on equal terms. I'm not some Mafia princess locked in a tower." "I wouldn't want you to be." She left the next day, returned to her apartment in Queens with money in her account and a phone number she could call if she needed anything. I had Tommy assign rotating surveillance, subtle enough that she wouldn't notice, but thorough enough to keep her safe. And then I waited. 3 days passed before she called. "There's a coffee shop on Steinway Street. Meet me there tomorrow at 2. I showed up 15 minutes early, scanned the location for threats, positioned my security at strategic points. When Sofia arrived, she rolled her eyes at the obvious protection. "Subtle," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I don't take chances with things that matter." "Is that what I am? Something that matters?" "I'm starting to think so." We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. She told me about her sister, about growing up in Queens with parents who'd emigrated from Italy with nothing and built a life through hard work and sacrifice. I told her about Antonio, about the business, about the weight of knowing I'd inherit an empire built on violence. "You could walk away," she said. "Just leave. Start over somewhere else." "It doesn't work that way. You're born into this, you die in it. There's no retirement plan for people like me." "That's depressing." "That's reality." She reached across the table, took my hand. "Then let's make a different reality. One where you get to choose. Where we both get to choose." It was naive and impossible, and everything I'd learned to dismiss as weakness. But sitting there with her hand in mine, I wanted to believe it could be true. Over the next 3 months, we fell into a pattern. Coffee dates that turned into dinners, walks through neighborhoods where no one knew my name or my reputation. Conversations that stretched into the early morning hours, covering everything from philosophy to favorite movies to childhood dreams we'd both abandoned. She met my father once, at his insistence. He studied her with the same intensity he'd used to assess threats and opportunities his entire life. And afterward, he pulled me aside. "She's good for you," he said. "She sees the man, not the position. That's rare." "It won't last. This life destroys everything good." "Only if you let it." His hands trembled as he gripped my shoulder. "I'm dying, Marco. 6 months, maybe a year. The doctors were clear. So let me say this while I still can. Don't make my mistakes. Don't sacrifice everything for power and reputation. Find something real and hold on to it." He died 4 months later, peacefully in his sleep, which was more than most men in our business got. The funeral was massive, attended by families from across the country, a show of respect for a man who'd built and maintained power for 4 decades. Sofia came, stood in the back during the service, and left before the reception. But that night, She showed up at my apartment with food and wine and a willingness to just sit with me in my grief. "Tell me about him," she said. "Not the boss, the father." So I did. I told her about the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and throw a punch, who'd read me stories at bedtime even after days filled with violence and hard decisions. The man who'd loved his sons fiercely and mourned Antonio until the day he died. "He would have liked you," I said. "He would have said you were too good for me, but he would have liked you anyway." "I'm not too good for you. I'm just different from your world. That doesn't make me better." "It makes you honest. Real. That's better than anything my world offers." She stayed that night, and many nights after. Slowly, carefully, we built something that felt like a life. She kept her apartment, her independence, her own world separate from mine. But we found ways to bridge the gap, to create spaces where we could just be Marco and Sofia, not the Mafia boss and the witness. I started making changes to the family business, following through on Antonio's vision of going legitimate. It was slow, complicated, and met with resistance from the old guard. But I had my father's authority now, and I used it to redirect our operations toward legal enterprises, real estate development, restaurant chains, import-export businesses that didn't involve smuggling. "You're really doing it," Sofia said one night, reading through the business plans I'd brought home. "Going legitimate." "Trying to. It'll take years, maybe decades, and there are parts of the business we can't just walk away from without starting a war. But yes, I'm trying." "Because of your father? Because of Antonio?" "Because of you." I took the papers from her hands, set them aside. "Because you make me want to be better than what I was raised to be. Because you deserve a life that isn't shadowed by violence and fear." She kissed me then, and it felt like absolution and promise and hope all mixed together. A year after my father's death, I proposed, not with a massive diamond or a grand gesture, but with a simple question asked in her apartment in Queens, in the life she'd built for herself. "I can't promise you easy," I said. "I can't promise you safety or normalcy or any of the things you probably deserve. But I can promise you honesty, loyalty, and every day for the rest of my life, I'll try to be worthy of the trust you placed in me that night you walked into that dinner." "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes to all of it. The mess and the complications and the beautiful disaster of trying to build something real in the middle of your world." We married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Sofia's sister was her maid of honor, crying through the entire service. Tommy stood as my best man, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo but fiercely protective as always. At the reception, Sofia pulled me aside. "I need to tell you something." My chest tightened. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I'm pregnant." The world tilted, recalibrated, came back into focus with new meaning. A child. My child. A life that would be born into this world but didn't have to be defined by it. "We're having a baby," I said, testing the words, feeling their weight and wonder. "We're having a baby," she confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy? Terrified? Both?" "Both. Definitely both." Our daughter was born 8 months later, tiny and perfect and utterly unaware of the complicated world she'd entered. We named her Lucia, after my mother, and from the moment I held her, I understood what my father had meant about finding something real and holding on to it. This was real. This was worth protecting, worth changing for, worth being better for. I looked at Sofia, exhausted and radiant in the hospital bed, holding our daughter with the same fierce protectiveness she'd shown that night she walked into a room full of killers to tell the truth. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth saving. For not running when you should have. For building this life with me." She smiled. "Thank you for letting me. For trusting me. For proving that people can change, that redemption is possible." Is it? Redemption? I think so. We're not who we were. We're better. And we'll teach Lucia to be better still. I kissed her forehead, then my daughter's, and made a silent promise to them both. This child would grow up knowing love and safety and choice. She would never have to carry the weight I'd carried, never have to compromise her soul for power or position. The world outside was still dark, still brutal, still unforgiving. But in this room, in this moment, we had light. We had hope. We had each other. And sometimes, that's all the redemption anyone needs. Years later, I would look back on that night at the family dinner, the night Sofia walked in and changed everything, as the moment my life split into before and after. Before, I was my father's son, destined to follow the path laid out for me, to perpetuate cycles of violence and betrayal. After, I became something else, something better. Not perfect, not clean, but trying. Always trying. And in the end, maybe that's what honor really means. Not never falling, but getting back up. Not never making mistakes, but learning from them. Not being fearless, but being brave enough to change. Sofia taught me that. A poor waitress who had every reason to stay silent, but chose truth instead. Who walked into darkness carrying light and somehow managed not to let it be extinguished. She saved me. And in doing so, she saved my daughter from inheriting the sins of her fathers. That's worth more than any empire, any power, any reputation. That's worth everything.